Welcome to BillionX. Today, we unfold the story of a man who didn't just build a company. He changed the future. In 1976, a 21-year-old Steve Jobs, full of wild ideas and unmatched belief, started Apple in a dusty garage with Steve Wozniak. While others saw personal computers as clunky machines for tech nerds, Jobs saw something more, a tool that could empower every human being. He wasn't obsessed with code. He was obsessed with beauty, design, and user experience. He believed simplicity was the ultimate sophistication. The Apple I wasn't just hardware. It was rebellion soldered into a motherboard. And inside that garage, under a bare bulb, history clicked into motion. This wasn't business. This was the first beat of a revolution. Jobs didn't just think differently. He scared people with how far ahead he was thinking. In boardrooms, he talked about devices that could feel like extensions of your hand, computers that were art, not just function. Executives rolled their eyes. Investors backed off. But Steve wasn't trying to fit in. He was trying to build something the world didn't know it needed. He fought for every pixel, argued over packaging, and obsessed over fonts. And behind that intense personality was a fire most couldn't handle. Apple wasn't built by following trends, but by chasing intuition. Steve didn't follow the market. He made the market follow him. At just 30 years old, Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, the very company he co-founded. The boardroom turned on him. The media laughed. He walked out with no job, no plan, and no apology. But where most saw failure, Steve saw freedom. In exile, he built Next and bought Pixar, turning both into icons. He reconnected with his creativity, sharpened his vision, and became a leader who no longer chased approval. He realized that being kicked out of Apple was the best thing that ever happened to him. Sometimes, life hits you like a brick, but it's not the fall, it's what you do after. In 1997, Apple was weeks away from bankruptcy. That's when Steve Jobs returned, not just as a CEO, but as a storm. He slashed products, restructured teams, and brought back focus. One by one, he lit a fire under the brand, starting with the iMac. Then came the iPod, then iTunes, the Apple stores. It wasn't just about selling, it was about crafting experiences. He made Apple cool again. Clean, elegant, bold. With one comeback, he didn't just save the company. He turned it into the most valuable brand on earth. That wasn't a strategy. That was vision in full bloom. Steve Jobs didn't tolerate good enough. He demanded the impossible, then made it happen. He made his team redo prototypes over and over, just to make the inside of a product look as beautiful as the outside. His obsession with fonts, spacing, and even the packaging drove everyone crazy, but it built a cult-like brand. He believed that people could feel quality, even if they couldn't explain it. Apple wasn't just a product. It was poetry in metal and glass. That obsession, that pain, that perfectionism. It's what made Apple different. It's what made Apple Apple. When the world zigged, Steve Jobs zagged. In 1997, he launched the iconic Think Different campaign, not to sell products, but to sell an idea. It celebrated rebels, misfits, troublemakers, the very people like Jobs himself. He wanted Apple to stand for something bigger than machines. He wasn't just telling customers to think differently, he was inviting them to become part of a movement. This wasn't marketing, it was mythology. With one message, he redefined Apple's soul. He made people believe that owning an Apple product wasn't just a choice, it was a statement. Before the iPod, music was scattered, CDs, MP3 players, illegal downloads. Steve Jobs wanted to put 1,000 songs in your pocket. His team said it was impossible. He said, "Do it anyway." In 2001, the iPod was born, sleek, simple, and revolutionary. It didn't just change how we listen to music. It changed the music industry itself. iTunes followed, turning songs into digital freedom. Suddenly, people were dancing to Apple, not just using it. Steve had turned an industry on its head again. One idea, one device, one revolution. In 2007, Steve walked on stage and said, "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone." People thought he was joking, but what followed was a masterstroke. A phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator, all in one. The iPhone wasn't just a device. It was magic. He had erased buttons, redesigned interaction, and opened the gates to a new era. Apple didn't just enter the smartphone industry. It defined it. The iPhone became the blueprint for the future. And Steve's calm, focused delivery on that stage, that was the sound of the world shifting. Steve Jobs believed in end-to-end control, hardware, software, even retail. That's why Apple built its own stores. He didn't want others to sell Apple. He wanted Apple to sell Apple. From the glass staircases to the minimalist layouts, every inch of an Apple store was designed like a sacred temple of tech. People didn't just shop, they experienced. Steve knew that controlling the environment meant controlling the feeling. And feelings sell more than features ever could. This was branding on a psychological level, and nobody else was playing the game like him. At the heart of everything Jobs built was one philosophy: simplicity. But simplicity is hard. It means cutting, rejecting, and refining, until what's left feels inevitable. That's what made Apple products so intuitive. They didn't teach you how to use them. They let you feel how they worked. Jobs believed that technology should dissolve behind experience. He once said, "It just works." That wasn't marketing. That was the mission. In a noisy world full of complexity, Jobs gave people clarity. His genius wasn't in making things complicated. It was in making them disappear. When Apple launched the iPhone, the giants woke up. Nokia, Microsoft, BlackBerry, they laughed at first. But their laughter didn't last. While they added features, Jobs removed clutter. While others expanded menus, he expanded minds. He wasn't chasing competition. He was chasing perfection. Apple didn't release products every month. They released milestones. Steve wasn't building a phone to compete. He was building a future to own. And by the time the world tried to catch up, he was already working on what came next. His focus wasn't just a strength, it was a weapon. Most CEOs would stop after changing the world once. Steve Jobs did it again and again. In 2010, he introduced the iPad. The critics mocked it. Just a big iPhone? But he knew what they didn't. Tablets weren't about replacing computers. They were about redefining comfort. The iPad became the ultimate tool for reading, watching, and creating. Artists, students, entrepreneurs, all found new power in its simplicity. It wasn't flashy. It was fluid. It was Jobs proving, once again, that the future belongs to those who trust their gut, not the market. Steve Jobs wasn't your typical leader. He wasn't always polite. He pushed people to the edge, sometimes too far, but he made them believe they could do the impossible. And then they did. He lived in extremes. Total control, absolute focus, and relentless energy. He wasn't easy to work with, but neither is history. His genius wasn't just in technology, it was in unlocking hidden potential in those around him. He once said, "Real artists ship." And that's what he did. He shipped dreams that changed lives and changed the world. Apple isn't just a company. It's a feeling. That was Jobs' secret. Every product told a story. Every launch was a moment. People didn't just buy Apple. They believed in it. From the unboxing to the first swipe, everything felt personal. Steve understood that emotions drive loyalty, that people don't remember specs. They remember how you made them feel. Apple was never about selling tech. It was about creating magic in people's hands. And Steve Jobs was the magician, not with tricks, but with truth wrapped in design. Behind the brilliance, Steve Jobs was battling something silent: cancer. Even as his body weakened, his vision stayed sharp. He worked until the end, not for profit, not for pride, but because he believed he still had more to give. He wanted to shape the future before his time ran out, and even in his final product meetings, he spoke with urgency, as if the clock was louder than ever. His death in 2011 shook the world. But what he left behind wasn't just a company. It was a legacy of courage, creativity, and conviction. Steve Jobs may have passed away, but his fingerprints are still on every Apple product. His way of thinking, the obsession with detail, the focus on simplicity, the belief in magic, lives on in every pixel. He didn't just build tools. He built a culture, a mindset, a religion of innovation. Apple without Steve Jobs is like music without sound, but his melody continues through the people, the products, and the possibilities he left behind. Some legends are written in books. Steve's was written in code, glass, and aluminum. From a garage to a global empire, Apple became the world's first trillion-dollar brand. Not by accident, but by belief. Steve didn't chase money. He chased meaning. That's why the brand stood tall while others fell. Every dollar earned was a byproduct of imagination, not intention. Today, Apple sits at the intersection of art and engineering, emotion and elegance. And it all began with one man who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. $1 trillion didn't build Apple. A vision did. Steve Jobs once said, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." He proved that. Through failure, through fire, through faith, he stayed true to his vision. And that vision changed everything. Today, every iPhone tap, every Mac design, every Apple launch carries a piece of his soul. His story isn't just history. It's a reminder that you can build something timeless too. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to BillionX, because here, we celebrate those who change the world.